Okay, so we are live with episode 35 for Mother's Day. I decided to have Teresa be the person who interrupts things with her loud phone
I turned it to silent
for Mother's Day. And so I put in the show notes in the little blurb that goes on Facebook and YouTube and stuff that we would talk about education, big lizards. The snippet picture that I used, Teresa picked out, was her holding one of the alligators. And then
I now hates me.
Yeah, she kind of hates everybody. I also put in there that the Herpetoculture Network group chat was talking about reptile people in relationships because there's actually a scattering of people in the Herpetoculture Network. A couple of us are married. There's a couple of single folks and different things, and they were all commenting and talking about being reptile nerds and whether or not they were trying to find significant others who either were or were not reptile nerds and how they would deal with that. But that wasn't the original plan for the episode. The original plan was to talk to Teresa about all the big lizards and having a family and a reptile facility because we do both. And her part of it has become more and more as she takes over and does more shows, and then the kids get more involved. And I thought on Mother's Day that'd be pretty cool because even on Mother's Day we ended up at the shop doing some stuff. Then we ended up in the garden, and then we were doing plants, which is a huge part of our house stuff, but has become a bigger part of the reptile facility stuff.
Yeah.
So, and Jessica says, Happy Mother's Day. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
So, we just went on a trip as a family, and a huge part of that trip was we went to the botanical gardens.
Yes.
Because we went to the Garfield Park Conservatory in Chicago and found out that kids really like that, and we think it's really cool, and we use it for ideas for enclosures.
Yeah.
And so, did you take anything away from that for the enclosures other than our banana sign that we took a picture of?
I was going to say our giant banana picture that I had no idea that bananas are actually bromeliad species. Are related. I thought that was pretty cool. But I know that we've gotten the little
pineapples that were the bromeliad relative. Bananas are the ones where it's not actually a tree; it's just leaves unfolding, and the leaves are dry at the base, so it looks like a stem.
Oh, that's right.
I think the pineapple was.
Yeah, it was that giant pineapple plant that. What I found is that all those air plants, they just literally stuck them everywhere. At this one, ones that we
Tillandsia.
Tillandsia we got from.
Yeah, we just got a box of those.
Who we got those from?
That was a Facebook Marketplace plant purchase.
Yeah.
And the lady just literally sent me a box with like 15 different Tillandsia in it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and while we were at the botanical gardens, like every room, they literally just stuck them to the walls. So I was like, if they can just get these to grow stuck to the walls it is a botanical garden, so that's the purpose of those is to grow plants. But I was like, that is a genius option for thank you, Christopher. That's a genius option for putting on the walls of enclosures. So
well, and then originally,
as long as they're not plant eating. I don't know how edible those are.
So that was the thing. Originally, I saw, so most people, like, they just silicone those to whatever it is they're going to use, or you can, like, use twine and stuff. But originally, I saw that because Cody from the Reptile Preservation Institute, he did, like, an Instagram Live or something. And then they were outside Starbucks. And they're in Florida, so they have a lot of invasive species and different plants and stuff. And they were, like, it looked like they were in the median for the road that it was like supposed to be nicely landscaped, but then this whole tree branch was just covered in Tillandsia. And it was him and another dude just plucking them off the tree like, thanks, Starbucks. And they just took them all, loaded them in their car, and left after getting stuff, like before work or whatever. That was originally where that idea came from.
But that's pretty much kind of what I got from.
Cover the walls, then get a giant group of Cuban tree frogs to free release them in. The building does not belong to us. And so
It
a
would
lot
be
of our
awesome because that would help with bugs so much. I would just let
yes,
so many things go,
it would be cool.
but not so
But
much.
yeah, we rent the facility, so we try not to. We do cool stuff, but we probably don't do as ridiculous of things as we
Yeah.
could do if we owned it. Like I wouldn't mind, you know, moving a wall or what have you. And like our landlords are cool, so some of the stuff we have done things in the basement where we moved things or whatever. They don't really mind as long as we don't.
They don't. Yeah, they don't
destroy stuff.
really.
Like we don't want to be jerks
say
about it.
anything.
We had a tokay at home who got out
But lived behind our refrigerator for a year and a half.
We could never get that stupid thing. And he would bark at you. Like if you walked into our kitchen.
That's how we knew he was alive.
He would bark at you. Yeah, he would bark at the dog all the time.
He'd bark. We'd be like, "Oh, he's still alive. You want to try to go catch him?" We'd go and kind of move the fridge, and he would take off in wherever.
Yeah, you can't just play dumb. Our town has like maybe 5,000 people, so the downtown is 15 storefronts. We're definitely the only reptile petting zoo. So if a gecko showed up in the bank next door or whatever, people would immediatany ask if it was us.
I don't know how those frogs are getting in. Yeah, we already get calls for like native species. I don't even know how we've gotten calls for bull snakes. We got
a call when the sheriff's department had a snapping turtle crossing the road and they thought it was our sulcata tortoise.
That one we kind of got a little. They were trying to tell us that it was ours, and we were like, no, it's not. And they're like, yes, we know it's yours. You're the only ones with big tortoises. And I was like, well, you can come look at our tortoise in our shop. And the guy came and looked, and he was like, well, do you have another one?
No. So that guy, that originally they were like, it might still be yours. And then the fire chief came.
Yeah.
And he was one of those people who goes, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's huge. It can't be that. And I was like, yeah, we know. It's 100-pound sulcata tortoise.
The guy was like, this one they said was like just a stone. And we're like, no, ours is a car tire. Like you don't drive around that. Like you stop because it's in the middle of the road. So and in the village knows us. Like everybody in the village knows us.
Yes, people do just assume you're reptilian. That is how that works.
So we've had the school called us, not the school, it was one of the
control. Well, the
animal
police officer who
runs animal control called us and asked us if any of our snakes had got out. This was before we actually had the facility. I think this is just when we had them at the house.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And he called us and asked if any of our snakes had gotten out. We were like, no. And he goes, there's one at the school. We think it might have gotten out. We go there. It was a bull snake. Yeah. We're like, no, this is native to here. It probably just went to the warm spot. And they're like, well, can you do something with it? We're like, that's kind of illegal. So no, and it's the cop telling us
Illinois has very specific rules.
So we did relocate it away from the school, like a couple blocks, because it's like it's obviously doing fine.
Our school made a grassland area by a creek. Like they purposely made a nature area, which is awesome, and it's really nice. And then on the other side of that are the baseball fields and softball fields. So like there's this really cool green space. And then they had a garden and they've got a bunch of cool stuff. And then a bull snake showed up in their boiler room. And it's like, well, yeah, there's a big thing of flowing water. You made a garden, you made a green space, and then this boiler room is warm. That's why that happened. And they just kept doing that. Are you sure it's not yours?
The school is 2 of the sides of the school, so 2 of the sides of the block that the school is on are crop fields.
Yeah,
so,
there's fields.
So it's not like it's a school in the middle of town. It's literally on the edge of town. And they're like, no, I think it's one of your snakes. And we're like, no, it's really not. But we'll come relocate it for you. So we don't, because of that, we always kind of are like, man, it'd be really nice to let a house gecko go and get rid of all the fruit flies or
that's the thing, like,
bugs or whatever, but
the basement
we can't.
is so heavily planted that like we really could do some neat stuff. Like I've thought about like even like the floor is concrete, so I thought about like even making a mulch path where when people go to look at the turtles, they walk on mulch instead of the floor, and then the
Yes, it's amazing.
redfoot
Animals
down
do
there.
like nature. That's surprising, isn't
Weird.
it?
But like even for something like that, just to have the redfoot down there, like I still like I don't know. It's not our place, so I don't want to. I don't want somebody to go to the landlord and be like, "Oh, did you know that they let a turtle just walk in your basement or whatever?" Like we
Yeah.
try to at least be polite. Like the funny thing is this isn't the original owner of the building. They bought it after we were already there. And so like even to meet them and explain like, yeah, there's 140 species of reptile in here and a bunch of spiders and then you had to have a whole conversation of no, they're not just free roaming, like they are in enclosures and all the ridiculous questions you always get
every time.
But they never really asked anything. They were like, "Oh, that's cool," and you have
That's
insurance.
cool.
Or
You're gonna
whatever.
stay
Like,
here, right? Was the big
Yeah.
question because it's a small town. So
Yeah.
the downtown is starting to pick up a little bit more. But
Yeah.
when we were here, we were like
We kind
the
of
business, and then there was like 2 other businesses on the whole block. So
Yeah.
we were
we had the potential to have some other building choices, but it was cool. And like they asked normal stuff like, "Do you have insurance or whatever?" And we do. So like none of that's weird. It's official things that you're supposed to do. That's normal. See, that's the thing though, man. You guys are in the southeast. Like Justin said, they have turkey geckos. They're everywhere. Like we don't really have up this far north. We don't really have invasive reptiles per se. Like you're not going to find tropical species that have become invasive here.
I very rarely find any lizards. Even when we are snakes, I find.
Yeah. It would be more common like farther south. When we stopped at state parks like along the river in southern Illinois, we found some stuff. But even up here, you do find a lot more snakes, a lot of turtles, a lot of amphibians. You just don't find skinks and stuff as often. You would if like in state parks or whatever, but it just isn't as common in town, especially in a town like ours. There's a lot of cats that run around.
Yeah.
That kind of nonsense. So like it even cuts down on like toads and garter snakes and really simple stuff. Like our yard has garter snakes in it, but like we landscape and garden, don't mess with them. Like we know where they are.
And maybe do things to get rid of the cats.
Yeah, and we try to get rid of the cats. But like we have a huge tree in our front yard and it's surrounded by lilies. And I know that garter snakes live there. Like we don't mess with it. We literally just mowed the front yard yesterday. And so we let it get as long as we can without getting in trouble technically.
I tried making it through May. Bill just wouldn't let me go with the no mow May.
I don't really want to pay a fine. See, I hear people talk on the East Coast, man, seeing turtles and stuff all the time. Christopher said, "Oh, I see our turtles and amphibians here on Long Island." We see turtles because we belong to the area club. It's like a sportsman's club or rec club, and there's a lot of turtles out there. But there isn't
ponds and stuff.
There isn't like a ton of species diversity. There are we spend enough time out there that we get to see during baby season, so we probably see more than most folks.
Turtles, we've caught soft shell turtles and stuff.
Yeah, and then when the kids kayak and stuff, they've snatched some stuff.
We actually have a kid who has on multiple occasions reached down and grabbed turtles out of the water as she's kayaking along with him.
See, I have never found a hog. Western hogs are an endangered species in Illinois, and there are people that have found them local to us because they message us on Facebook and ask about it, and we have to tell them like, "Hey, don't touch those; you can get in trouble."
Yeah.
Up here, the big thing is people tell us all the time about all the alligator snapping turtles that they see, and it's just a baby common snapping turtle every time. We get tons of messages about that, and I always tell them, "Oh, text me a picture or message me a picture, and we'll let the state know, and they can make a record." Every picture we ever get is a baby common snapper, which whatever, it's fine. Like, and I just explain the difference, and it's cool because it lets me tell people like, hey, if you really do ever find a bigger one that is an alligator snapper, then I can tell them, hey, call IDNR and make a record or whatever. And people are usually cool. Like they find that interesting, so I think that they'll do it. I would bet the Turks thing in far southern Illinois, like down south of St. Louis, there probably are. Like we get a lot. The species diversity in farther south in Illinois is ridiculous. It technically, in all of Illinois, should be, but it's just so developed north of Springfield and Bloomington that we lose a lot of it. Like technically, timbers and stuff exist, quote unquote, throughout our entire state, and then you don't see anything. But then I know there are dens in Wisconsin just across the border. So like, if they exist north of here and they exist south of here, they should exist
It
here.
has to be something.
And it's just because the agriculture development, and then once you get close to Chicago, like it's just so developed.
Cats.
And especially coming out of Chicago, like the cat problem is huge. So it cuts down on tons of that stuff.
You can tell I'm angry about cats.
Yes.
I just cleaned out our garden, and our neighbor's cats are pooping in it.
I think people who are listening on the podcast could probably hear the face.
Hear the face that I just made.
You could probably hear the lip right there.
It was really angry.
Yeah, I know. I was there.
I hate that those cats are there anyways, because all the slugs might go away if the cat stops scaring the garter snakes away.
Yes, and the toads for sure would be eating a lot of our garden pests. That is
yes.
a big time thing.
We haven't had a toad in a long time, so.
No, which surprises me. We continue to have garter snakes. Well, we have neighbors that have like water features and stuff in their yards, so you can hear all the trilling this time of year. So there's definitely garter snake food around, just not in our yard. Yeah, Christopher, cats are definitely the most destructive invasives. Aside from plants, people discount plants, but my big kick right now with the education thing is Phasmids. Phasmids are all federally banned, and it's still a super easy thing to get because they're invertebrates and nobody cares. And then I have people up here that will post on social media and have like all these Phasmids, and I'm like, oh, dude, I wish I could have that, but like, I know that regulators and stuff watch our social media because they tell me that, and they're like, oh, I saw your Facebook post, like congratulations or whatever. It's like, oh, so you're definitely paying attention. So I can't do things that are a little sketchy. But yeah, that's my big kicker is Phasmids, because they would be super cool for kids shows. So we stick with glow in the dark scorpions and
roaches.
Roaches are
lots
a big
of different roaches.
Yeah. Tailless scorpions for the Harry Potter bug.
That's my kick.
Yeah. Teresa does a roach lesson about.
We do a lot of math on adding trash up. What are those? I'm guessing she's asking about Phasmids too.
Oh, Phasmids!
I had to Google it.
Yeah, it's stick insects. So when you see like the huge, like especially that people do the Vietnamese ones that are really like literally like 12+ inch sticks, and
we're not sponsored.
Or like 12+ inch sticks, and then the ones that are spiky and look like they have armor. Jessica, you're local-ish. I don't know if you go to Brookfield Zoo, but for all those who aren't local, if you ever get a chance to go to Brookfield Zoo, they usually have really cool invertebrate stuff. And at one time, Brookfield, and then we also went to St. Louis, and they had a really
St. Louis has an amazing insect house.
And their zoo is free. And we went there, they probably had 8 or 10 species of phasmid in like giant enclosures. It was really cool.
They have actually, when we brought the kids, it was so awesome because they were so enthralled. They actually have an insect room you walk through, and everything is out. Like it's not an enclosure. Well, there's things obviously enclosures because like they have black widows and things like that. But there's actually a room that like there's tarantulas that if you look up, they're in above, and like it's.
Yeah, they had bunches of grasshoppers and stuff that were just flitting around.
Yep.
And it was Brookfield has done that, like their bat house, their parakeets and things that are just kind of open and around. That was kind of the same idea with just like land lubbers and the big old grasshoppers. If you follow Kai Fan, who is doing the grasshopper feeders, he has some of the lubbers with like all the weird colors and stuff, and they're all, they have black ones and orange ones and that kind of thing. They were doing something really similar. It was pretty neat. Yeah, it's super worth it. It's really cool. As a skinny dude, you've been told, I am sorry that you look like a stick bug.
I've never had that problem.
With your Chubby Mermaids
My
shirt.
Chubby Mermaid shirt. Save the Chubby Mermaids.
So,
We're getting back on track for
that. Yeah. No, I made posts, like I told people to come in the chat and ask you random stuff. So with it being Mother's Day and the kids and doing all the plants and stuff, I posted in the show notes about doing or having a family and also having the facility. And you actually were literally just talking about how we have different households and stuff like that. How does that work from your point of view as the mom?
So as a mom, my brain does not work like Bill's. Bill can compartmentalize and be like, I'm going to go to the shop and do stuff. And I flit. So I think it's harder. It's honestly harder for me to do that because it's not in our house. Like today we were here and so I fed the tegu, and things here. But it's very hard for me. Like I have to plan, like this is the time I'm spending at the shop. This is the time I'm spending at home. So it's very hard, honestly. Because I don't want, as a mom, I don't want to neglect the kids, but I do also have the animals that they do need me to do things for them and clean and stuff. So it does come down to I have to actively think about it. It's not something where I can just, go into the reptile room and work and then come in and cook dinner. Because they are separate buildings there. And they're not super far away. So it's not like I have a commute or anything like that to go to them. But it's hard and it's unmotivating.
So we actually talked about this. So I was on Snakes and Stogies and we talked about having a facility and different things. And that was a big part of it, was whether or not it actually is work then for some things. Like some of it's not, like it when you're just hanging out, like feeding stuff or whatever, or feeding the vegetable eaters, like just making a salad or chopping stuff up for the bugs or whatever, like that's still feels like a hobbyist, I suppose. But like I talked about in Snakes and Stogies, like because we have to go there, and then the other day we were cleaning up, and so I had the kids organize all the stuff we use for shows, and then we put it in this room. And there's a room in the shop where we store stuff that we use for shows, and I'm doing the black box cage build, so I was talking to Teresa about which species are going to go there, and then if they're going to go there, what we're going to move and different stuff. And that's way more like business planning.
Yeah.
Like a store. Like, if
work.
we were,
it's not, yeah.
Organizing a new display at the hardware store where Teresa works, like that. We were talking about it kind of in the same way.
I actually bought a calendar, just like I have at work, one of those big desk calendars. And I was like, hey, so my brain will work. Can you write down what you want me to do on the calendar? He hasn't figured that one out yet because we have separate calendars.
Yeah.
But that's just how I have to. And I have to do that a little bit because a couple years ago, I had to have a little bit of a conversation with myself because I was momming the animals. And when, I don't know if anybody listening remembers, we had a 17-foot reticulated python named Elvira. And I was in love with Elvira. I loved Elvira. She was beautiful and very friendly. And
she was the anti-retic.
Yeah, she was amazing. And she passed. She she was large. Turns out she was older than what we thought. Once she passed, we had the vet come and do necropsy, and turns out she was probably a little bit older than what we thought. And then it tore me up. So I had to, at that point, like, I still bond with a couple of them. And that's probably, those are the animals that I've kind of always been bonded to. But I do. I have to separate
Big
that.
lizards. She means big lizards. That's what she
I have
means.
to separate that because, like, I'm not nearly as attached to Debbie or Fester or any of our bigger snakes like I was before, because I that was a, like, and even when we started getting, like, Bill was like, well, we need a new big snake, and I was like, I don't know, it's only been like 4 months. I think we need to wait a little bit longer. But
meanwhile, trying to do a festival with 1,000 people, and I'm holding a 6-foot red-tailed boa, like, look, kids, this is the thing we're gonna do as a group with 20 of you. It's gonna take a long time.
So yeah. And for me not to bond, it is really, I can't, like, I can't do, like, I bond with anything that I spend time with. Well, let's just be serious. Let's just be honest.
But you also have to think about it in the context of what we do. So when I talk to a lot of the folks that I like through her Herpetoculture Network chat, or Snakes and Stogies chat, or even the people that I have and I interview for Lizard Brain, those people listening, you are able to keep things that don't have to be handleable, and don't like people always talk, oh, I have carpet pythons and some of them are jerks, or like my Woma bites me or whatever. Like, that works. And we do have some animals like that. But the vast majority of our species, like, we picked the species because it's probably pretty chill. And then the individual animal, then we work at it. Like, we handle the corn snakes all the time. We handle the bull snakes all the time. Like, the tegus or whatever, like, they're chill, they're cool. And so it makes it easier, I guess, to become attached to them. Especially, like, you weren't a reptile person. And so you were, you had a farm and you had mammals and animals like that.
Yeah, you bond with those.
And then, like, if we just had a whole collection of dart frogs or green trees or whatever, like, because we had a saltwater fish tank and you really liked that.
I bonded with a couple of those.
But again, the big species that had personality, but like when you treated that more like we treat gardening and keeping plants, and like we're going to organize this and move this thing with a goby and whatever. And I think if we just had a display facility with, like dart frogs or whatever,
like the night
just go through and prune things and set up the mister.
Yeah.
And you're not going to hang out and hold the dart frogs. They don't do that.
Like the night owl.
Yeah. But
it's really beautiful.
Thing we don't touch.
Thing we don't touch, yes.
But, like, I mean,
yeah,
well more than half of our animals are things that people hold. Like, that's why they're there. And it has to be not even adults. It has to be things that a kid can hold.
Yeah.
So they're all super chill, which then, well, how'd you get them super chill? Well, if it wasn't a species that started that way, then we had to spend a bunch of time with it to get it to chill. Okay, well, then now you're spending a ton of time holding a fat ball python or whatever. Like, it makes it easier to bond. Yeah. And we do have, like, some display stuff. Like, we have Amazon tree boas that are in the bathroom and in like a taller enclosure. I have done darts before. I currently have like a little baby Bahama anole. We have some invertebrates that, like, Indy has a handful of tarantulas that are in between that sling and adult stage. Big enough. Yeah, they're little, so they're scared of everything, so you don't really touch them. Most of my Apluris stuff that I keep them because I really like the fact that they're an iguanid for Madagascar, but they're not. They're very scared of hands. They're very
fidgety.
And so we have stuff that was like straight up display.
Well, and then our venomous.
Yeah, and even like that one, like for us, like that, the Boiga, like that thing is, I mean, it's not like defensive or anything. Like you could get it out on a hook, or it doesn't really care. It's just that our purpose for having it is that we don't do that, because in Illinois you're not allowed to, and so it just eliminates it. Like, we
Makes
set it
it
up,
way
it looks
easier.
cool,
Yeah.
we missed it and do whatever, and then it's its thing, and it's just like a fish tank or whatever.
Yep.
It's not interacted with really, and then because literally below it are bearded dragons, and then leopard geckos, and then a redfoot and an iguana, like things that are super interactive. And so like you don't need to. I have a Coleonyx gecko, a Pictus gecko, and a boiga or whatever, like these different things up here that we get them out, we display them, teach a little lesson about, Coleonyx, and they're from the States and whatever. And then they're little, we don't really play with them. Oh, you want to hold one? Here's a leopard gecko. And like,
Yeah.
it's just a different way of doing it. But if you hang out and play with a retic and it's your first giant snake and it turns out to be cool, then you get really attached
Then
to
you
it.
bond to it. So.
Yeah, that would, so on the having the patients at work thing, like if you work in veterinary care, it would be kind of similar. Like we did a lot of stuff with the rescue side, and that part sucks too, because then you're going to get bonded to things that probably came in jacked up, and then they might not last as long, or they have these problems or whatever. Like, that part starts to suck. Yeah. And like I said, if you're just a keeper, you're able to pick species that, who cares? Like, set it up in a cool enclosure and then just watch it do gecko stuff. Like, you don't ever have to touch it again. But then most of our stuff is the opposite of that.
Yeah. And like you said, we do have some stuff that is display, and that tends to be the stuff that is hobby more than business. Our
it's
business
just stuff that I wanted.
Yeah. it's stuff that Bill wanted.
Yeah, it is.
Because all the stuff that I want is nice.
Or huge.
Or huge. I like big lizards.
I am aware.
I like the big snakes. I like the ones we have. I know I can't bond to them.
Well, and do you think that is because the big snakes are easier to work with? Or why do you like the big stuff more than like the corn snakes or whatever? Like, because
I don't know.
Because like the corn,
I don't know, because I am kind of
bull,
setting
like,
myself up
chill.
for like a heartbreak every 10 years. Because corn snakes live a lot longer.
Yeah.
Big, yeah. I don't know. I think big stuff, you never get that. With little things, you never get that big just sit and chill personality. You do, like, you'll have one-offs, like Moody, our bull snake. Literally in the middle of a show, he'll just turn into a rope. And just like, you can hold him and he's laying down on each side of your hand and not moving at all because he's just a blob. And then our other bull snake is just runs around all the time. But I like that, hey, I can just chill and sit on the sidewalk while this snake just lays here on the sidewalk with me. Or like, you can't, I guess you can put small lizards on leashes, but it's way easier to handle a big giant lizard on a leash with harness.
Yeah. At like a show or something.
At a show.
Yeah,
and like, we've kind of always joked and said that to get a big lizard to just be chill, kind of treat him like a dog. And that's easier to do with you can't treat a little lizard like a dog, because they'll run. They'll just run away. And I don't really like small dogs either. Like our dog has a 150-pound Newfoundland mix, so
Yeah.
I guess I just like big things.
Yeah. I mean,
I just that and I'm even with dogs, like I've never liked that wound little dog. I've always liked the bigger dogs. They're chill. You just kind of hang out.
I am in the process of shifting some animals around. Christopher said that he follows somebody on YouTube that has big, huge, like room size enclosures for hog islands. I am in the process of finishing the South America thing that I keep talking about. I put more plants in it. And then when that shifts, that will allow me to move the monitor that we have currently in one of our setups that came from a zoo. And I need to modify that one a little bit. That's going to go for a hog island. That thing is like 8x4x4, maybe
8x4x3. I think it's 3 feet.
Already has like rockwork interior and stuff. We're just gonna
have to seal up some of that rockwork because that monitor lizard dug a whole bunch of holes.
But then honestly, the cool thing about doing the rockwork stuff, like if you just change the paint scheme to more terracotta, it looks desert, so I don't really care. And then I just got some sedum and some different things because we got ideas for that from the botanical garden that we just went to. And then that will house our hog island. Came in through the rescue route, so kind of has like a split lip thing. Looks a little goofy in the face, but still has this super crazy, beautiful hog island colors. And so it's still just going to be a display type of thing. Because of the route that it came through, it's not too cool with the monkeys and the bird feet hands. So it's really pretty to look at, and that's about it.
And the enclosure has huge glass doors. So it'll be a really good
it is like a
enclosure.
Regular zoo style enclosure. Actually was donated to us by one of the zoos up here, which was pretty cool. And then, like I have mentioned a million times, I get Zoopoxy from Mike Stefani. And so I'm going to patch up some of those spots with the Zoopoxy. And then Teresa paints all of our stuff. And Mike talked to us about getting acrylics. It worked super good when we did it for the iguana. It looks just like wood when she painted it. So do the same kind of idea with like the terracotta colors for the sand. It should be killer. And then we got more of the silicone molds to look like rocks, because the silicone molds that we got to look like trees are really cool. Jessica, green iguanas are native to South America. They are supposed to be far south of Florida. Iguanids in general, it typically starts Central America and goes south. So when you talk about like Tenosura and the Mexican and Central American species, and then you go farther south and you get into actual iguanids for green iguanas. And then when you talk about Cyclura, that is all of the Caribbean islands, and as they parse out into the different islands of their own species. So they're all iguanids. And then the Aplurus, like I was talking about earlier, are an iguanid genus that's from Madagascar, but they don't have a crest. And so when you look at them, they have more of a head structure like Fiji iguanas a little bit. But in Fiji iguanas, you can still see the little bit of a crest in males. And these are, the Aplurus genus is more dry forest desert. And so it's way more like Tenosura as opposed to iguana. But yeah, it's the mishmash as you go from like Tenosura in
honestly
mainland.
I didn't know they were an iguana until he told me. So
Tenosura,
I was like, oh, that's a really cool lizard.
Mainland Mexico, Central America. You jump out to the islands, you get island gigantism, so Cyclura and rhino iguanas and things like that. And then farther south, when you get into rainforest, you have iguana, which are going to be your giant green tree dwellers. And then Aplurus, being related to the iguanids, is probably a historic remnant from when Madagascar and Africa were smashed into South America, and then they just stayed in that dry forest and got small over a couple of million years. But they do a lot of the same stuff. They alert to birds and have their own head bobbing, and they have a whole thing just like our big iguana. And even our bearded dragons, like they're on the agamid side, but they do the same thing with the visual stimulation. So yeah, there's a bunch of different kinds of iguanas, but greens are South American tree dwellers, and now Florida. So I mean, technically, I guess realistically, like they're an established species in Florida. You could consider it an extended part of their range. Like they, I guess theoretically could have gotten there if they transited South America or if they used the currents and
they could. I was gonna say they could have swam. I mean,
theoretically
you've got all sorts of iguanas that swim.
That's like saying Bahamian animals are invasive to Florida. They are, and they probably came over on boats from the Bahamas, but they very easily could have transited from the Bahamas via natural means, on natural rafts or from a hurricane or debris or whatever. Like that's a plausible thing. Green iguanas, it's a lot farther to travel, granted, but
they're bigger though.
Yeah, I mean, you have when we were looking at gold tegus, there's a bunch of not a bunch, there are a few studies being done about gold tegus and their weird broke apart ranges in northern South America and how it's going into these little islands. And then did we take them there, or did they get blown there or swim there, or what happened, and how their things are parsing out, so that people discount the fact that tropical animals are able to travel kind of anywhere in the tropics within reason. And so it isn't, a lot of times it's our fault, but maybe if we didn't mess with them, they would travel anyway. Like there's a lot to be done with that. Yeah, Christopher said they had to have been there at least 80 years already. Yeah, there are pictures from the late 1800s, early 1900s, like cool old-timey black and white pictures in like top hats and crap, and there's iguanas, and people are messing with them and taking pictures and postcards and all that garbage. So
great food source on a ship.
Yeah, and I mean, in all likelihood, that probably, it probably was the rum and sugar and slave trade transiting the Caribbean, coming up with the Spanish in Florida. Mm-hmm. They were probably just eating them, and then, it's not a good thing, but like when you talk about old school back in the day importers that used to like let chameleons go or whatever, so they would have chameleons that they could go out and grab out of the tree to sell in a pet store. Like the same idea is true. If you were running sugar up and down the Caribbean and you always ended up in Florida, you would be eating iguanas, and you're like, well, let's just let some go over here, and then when we land here, we can get more. I mean,
yeah,
that makes sense. Like it, I don't know. Yeah,
Circle
that does
jive.
But it's still humans were responsible, but maybe it wasn't modern humans who have really stupid pets, because they're not a great pet. Fried anything is good. There is a place up here that does gator tacos and gator in their chili, and they are amazing.
There's a Cajun restaurant that we have yet to go to. We get told all the time that they do 1 day a week, I think it is. Yeah. The guy goes down to, I think he said goes
Gator Farm.
To a gator farm and grabs a couple and brings them up.
Yeah.
And if people are willing to pay, he'll cook you a whole gator. I think it's a small one. I don't think it's huge.
Well, they've done the like hog roast. Like they on their social media is like, the 5-foot grill or whatever, doing the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then they do like gator tail and different stuff like that. And that's from 2 people that have a gator in the basement of their facility and a gator in the first floor. And it came in the display cage, or in the display case where you would put like a cash register.
I was gonna say it's just like a regular old glass display.
Mm-hmm. So
who likes to be a pain in the ass by? Oh, sorry, probably shouldn't have said that one.
Yeah, that one can slide. Apple's not that hardcore. So since Dominique, I don't think arrived in the chat, but she was commenting that she speaking of wives, she said she wanted to do she was giving Justin a hard time doing a snakes and stogies. She said like Real
Um.
Housewives of Herpeticulture or something. And I told her you would be super down for that. When they were all talking, yes, speaking of wives, Justin's wife is anti-caiman. She's also anti-alligator snapping turtle.
The snap,
So
I can see
we
the
are
snapping turtle.
working on her.
Our snapping turtle is called Lord Voldemort because he's the devil.
No, that's the common. The common,
So she won't let him have either?
he wants an alligator snapper.
See,
Specifically.
the alligator snapper is actually not too bad. Ours are fairly chill. um, I tried to put a limit on reptiles. It doesn't do very good
So
when you have your own credit card.
I will say, one, if it's something that is like that, I definitely ask. Because
Yes.
those are
Yes.
like caiman and stuff, like that's for real. Like,
Well, the
that can
caiman
get big enough to do some damage.
and see our little guy is still little, and
Yes. And
that
it's specifically as a trigonatus.
That was originally going to be our show gator because it stayed small enough. If we got a decent setup, we could keep it in an enclosure even for shows, because I wasn't planning on handling it. That was kind of our compromise because originally I didn't want gators or venomous.
Well, we also with the trigonatus or Paleosuchus in general, people get it twisted where they get bigger. It's like a lot of imports. People get bigger imports because bigger imports are like quote unquote more impressive, and people think that they're cool or whatever. But dwarf caiman in particular take a super long time to sexually mature, and so if you get adults, they usually are pretty nuts. Like they're very
and
territorial.
Already old.
Yeah, and
enough
they're
that
already
they're
old.
set.
And so because crocodilians, I mean, they're smart and they get big, and I mean they could be a dangerous animal. Like that was our whole thing about like when we picked dwarf caiman instead of gators, the growth rate, the sexual maturity rate was a lot slower.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have to think about it from the perspective of like a lot of the folks that we talk to are talking about keeping a pet, and we're talking about using them to teach. Because in Illinois, in order to have a special, like Teresa has a special use permit, in order to have the boiga and have the crocodilians on the permit, she has to do 6 bona fide educational shows a year
with
using
them.
And so
one of them, or it doesn't have to be all of them. Like I can use just the boiga, which we use the boiga a lot because it isn't a display. And it's just easier that way. I don't have to tape the mouth or anything like that. So we can use the boiga for all 6 of them if we want. The goal would be to use both gator and or both crocodilian and the venomous. So when we've originally came up with this compromise of we need a crocodilian, I was this has to be educational. This has to be something where we can show people that they're not the best pets. And so we got a small one that was going to stay small potentially for up to 15 years. Is their sexual maturity doesn't even happen until 15. So
well, and it actually takes males longer to sexually mature than females.
Yeah.
Dwarf caiman are actually super weird, and they aren't great pets because of that. Because people get them the wrong way. Where like if it's just like Justin is commenting about corns or whatever. Like if you started out little and had it for a long time and worked your way up, that's great. But then everybody wants like a 5-foot smooth front to show off because they're black and they're beautiful and they have red eyes, like all the cool pictures or whatever. That thing will never be cool it's never going to chill out. You literally took it out of a swamp in Guyana and just brought it. Like, you can't expect that thing. Also take into account that they are smart. It knows what happened. Like, it went through this huge trauma, and now these weird monkeys are messing with it after this other monkey took it out of the jungle. Like, it's never going to be cool, you know? And that was a big part of it when I was explaining it to Teresa, because she didn't start out as a reptile person. And so it has never been a life goal of hers to own a crocodilian. It is of mine. And so when I was like, hey, this is what I want to do, and on the business side,
have a lot of checkpoints.
Yeah. But on that's the thing though, is like,
and now we have 2 alligators that I'm like, how did we get these again? Oh, we just got them.
So, yes, that was weird. But that is another thing that we were talking about with different folks, of like marrying the reptile guy. Of it's cool that we have the gators and whatever, and they are useful in the context of our business or what have you. But like, that's a separate story that we'll get to in a minute. But of how they came to us is because now we are those people in regards to the state and IDNR and amnesty and things. But with the Cayman,
well, kind of,
sort of. But with the Cayman, like, having a crocodilian in the context of what we do as a business makes us more competitive, because in Illinois specifically, there was a very semi-famous person who had a big gator, and that was like his whole show was this big gator. And then he retired. And so
there was a business vacuum
in the shows and stuff that we do. Like,
I didn't want to fill it.
No. But like, we were never going to get the shows that person had, because we didn't have what that person had. And so through the years, we have like usurped some of those shows where people will be like, oh, we used to have this person with a gator or X, Y, and Z. And now we have you guys, and you come to our library or whatever. But it was different. Like, you guys bring a tortoise and you guys bring a gecko or whatever. But we didn't have that thing that this other competitor had. And customers kind of keep saying that to you, like, oh, do you have the gator, or do you have the thing? And it's like, no, we do a different thing, and trying to pitch your style or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like, trying to tell a non-reptile person who has kids and doesn't want them to get eaten by an alligator, and is a mom and doesn't mess with that stuff, and like, I
just looked at it completely different, because it wasn't. This is the same argument we don't have. It's not really an argument we have, but whenever we discuss new animals, Bill is like, I want this really cool, beautiful snake. And I'm like, okay, well, how big is it? Well, it's about the size of a ball python. And I'm like, so we have ball pythons. We don't need that snake. Because
Casey Cannon, if you're listening to this, that was me trying to pitch her on an Angolan python. And she was like, you mean a ball python that looks different? That was that discussion.
Because, and this happens a lot in our relationship. Not a lot. Right. Because
I don't like it, but she is right.
Always have people who are like, well, where's your gator? We don't need a gator, because we're not educating you on a crocodilian. We're educating you on these other things that you can touch. Because if we do the gator in the state of Illinois, we have to tape its mouth. We can't, if we untape its mouth, we can't have people within 10 feet of it. That's just not fun. So our Cayman never gets touched. That little guy, he's only, maybe 1.5 feet with tail, maybe 2 feet, probably more like 1.5 feet. So I don't tape his mouth. He sits there the whole show with his mouth wide open, because I just don't want to stress him that way right now. And and everybody's like, well, do you have a gator? Well, yes, but you can't touch it. Well, that's not fun. So I'm like, there's no point. The same with like, everybody's like, I want to hold a snake. They don't care whether it's a ball python or a $3,000 snake. They just want to hold a snake. And I can teach on both of those things. It's not going to change anything. And
but it changes how cool it is to me.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, but that was like, and I talked about that when I was doing the whole episode of having a facility or having a reptile room or
Yeah.
whatever.
We talk about that quite often.
You guys who are listening to this that have a collection, even if you have a big collection, you know, you may have more animals than we have. If you aren't utilizing those animals to do education to the public, then your animals probably have a different purpose. You either are a collector and you have a bunch of carpet pythons or a bunch of geckos or whatever, or you breed or whatever the case may be. You know, your reason for having, I don't know, Billy with all the stripe stuff, like because he wants to produce more stripe things, and then he collects some things that he just wants to have or whatever. Like our reason for having stuff is not that. It's to show things or to touch it, or we do have some things where they're not touched, but we went to a museum or we went to a school and did a lesson about whatever, ecology or genetics or
a lot of
something.
the bigger shows, like the festivals or the museum that we do, those animals, if they can go on display, if they're small enough that we can put them into even if it's still a small display for that animal, but they're only be in it for a couple hours, we will utilize those animals for those types of shows. Like our snapping turtles. Our snapping turtles are not touched, but we just put them in a tote with a 5-gallon bucket of water. And it's not in a 5-gallon bucket, but it's like a stock tank style tank, with a 5-gallon bucket of water, keep them moist. And then we put stanchions up so people can see them, but can't touch them. They always try to touch them because it doesn't matter how many signs you put up. There's one person that doesn't read the sign and tries to pet the alligator snapper. Thankfully, he doesn't bite as bad. The big guy doesn't. I guess the little guy bit through your finger one time. Mm-hmm. But so secret gargoyle. I can't actually think of a time you've snuck an animal in. You did, I think, with one of Walter's turtles. I just showed up and there was a turtle in the basement. But I don't think there's anything else that's been snuck.
Well,
in.
So we have had animals come home that weren't planned, but
it's never the kids that can't read, it's the adults. So they can read.
Yeah,
they
adults.
Just choose not to. Sorry.
Kids
had to make that note. It's not really ever the kids. The kids see that piece of rope and they stop because that is a thing that they are actively learning in school. It's the adults.
Yeah, we copy a lot of things from school. Like even like our teaching styles are totally different. Teresa sounds like a teacher. Like she helped with the kids in elementary school and like when they had parent volunteers and stuff like that. Like she uses the same.
I never want to be a teacher. God bless them.
But like the where they do the clap thing and sit down, like the 1, 2, 3 or whatever.
1, 2, 3, look at me.
She uses tons of those and it's like super effective for her. But I don't teach like that at all.
I work in the retail industry. Adults are the worst too.
But no, I don't see, and that's the other thing too that I've talked about on Snakes and Stogies and stuff before, and a little bit on Lizard Brain. I've talked to some of the guests that have spouses that are into it as well. Like I don't have that of like, I'll just sneak one by her or whatever, like, because we have a facility and in my job,
need to know what's there so that I can feed them when he's not home.
Like I travel a lot. And so the kids help and Teresa isn't hugely involved and, hey, this needs water or that, needs fed or whatever the case may be. And like most of the stuff, if it's something that I want and she doesn't, it's really expensive. And so I wouldn't spend that kind of money without telling her. Because me as a person who was already a reptile nerd, and then Teresa learning all of this and now working professionally as the educator part, like we are far enough into this that if it's like a unique purchase for us, it's probably something pretty advanced, or like it's probably pretty expensive. Some of the obscure stuff is still a little cheaper, but like it's probably something that is going to cost some money. And so I wouldn't have done that just on the money side to like not tell her. And then the other part is the stuff that I actually like crocodilians. I like monitor lizards, different things like that. Like the stuff that I like, she has gotten into big lizards and she's good at it, but like you can get hurt. Like you can't just open a box with a black throat monitor in it or a croc monitor in it or a lace monitor. Like there are bigger things, but like the stuff that I'm into is big. And if I didn't tell her like, hey, when you're feeding that turtle, like it's actually a Pacific giant musk turtle and it's bigger than a football, it'll take your finger off. Like, don't touch that, it isn't like just mixing more Pangea for a gargoyle gecko or something. Like it's usually more involved than that. And like, we don't really, if it were something like that, like Chris from Badlands Herpeticulture, he and I have been talking, and I would really like to get a gargoyle gecko from him. And a gargoyle, in the context for us, we use a crested gecko, and I was like, oh, a gargoyle, they don't jump quite as much, and it'd be a little easier to kind of like walk on your hands or what have you. Like, if me and Chris were talking, and I would just tell Teresa, like, oh, hey, I'm going to get a gargoyle from Chris, this is what it is, and then, it eats Pangea or whatever. Like, it's a really simple thing, and then it's not like crazy money, and then that kind of thing. Like, and there's a reason. It changes it because it's a business expense. It's probably going to be a more advanced quote unquote species, or like a lot of money or whatever. Yeah, we don't really get like basic stuff. Or if we do, like we're at NARBC or something, and then we took the kids and, like our oldest for her birthday wanted a ball python or whatever. And it was like, okay, well, it's a birthday present, so we're going to spend this much money. And I don't really care what kind of ball python it is. Just get the one that Milana wanted or whatever. Like it's way more like family, just buying a thing that you had to buy as a family type of thing. It's not, I don't know.
So is he saying that was already there? Is his
that was
you just didn't see
that's what
it?
he would say. Yeah.
You just didn't see it. It was already there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen because my kids,
Yeah,
they
my
like to
kids rat me
tattle.
out. Yeah, my kids would
They
for
don't
sure
even
rat me
realize
out.
they're doing it.
Yeah.
They're just like, where did this come from?
Yeah. Yeah, they can't.
Because they do all the they usually do. So when we a lot of times it'll be like, hey, everything needs watered, and they'll water everything except for the giant snakes and the venomous.
Right.
And there's been a couple times where it's been like, is there something in this enclosure? And Bill's like, yes. So just a couple times, and and I don't remember. They were usually small lizards, maybe.
Oh, that was what I was saying. Was that's kind of like the yeah. So that's kind of like the gators. So this last NARBC, what you would think of as a competitor for our business is a company called Crosstown Exotics, and Colin and Mike are the two guys that run that. And Mike and I were talking about a Mata turtle. And I was like, oh,
yes, you did just come out with
I was like, oh, my son, as if you listen to this, you probably already know, my son is a big time turtle nerd. He's really into them. And he thinks that Matas are the coolest thing ever, which most people who are in turtles think that because they're really cool. And Mike and I were talking, and he was like, dude, I have one. It's not super big. But Mike and Colin do just shows. They don't have a facility like ours where they would display things. It's just shows for them. And we talk all the time. We do a lot of charity stuff, and they're cool. Like you would think that we would be competitive or whatever, but we're not. Like we refer business to each other and stuff. And it's a good relationship for two businesses in the same field. And So we're sitting there talking, like, they have a table at NARBC. We always hang out. Like, I have bought a frog from him and some bugs and stuff, and he's very cool. And he was like, yo, he messaged me, are you coming back on Sunday, right? Because we went to the auction on Saturday. And
Yeah.
And he's like, yo, are you coming back
I was
on
at
Sunday?
work on Sunday.
And I was like, yeah, you know, we'll be there or whatever. And he was like, I'm going to bring the Mata Mata. I'm going to give it to you. And and I, you know, holy, because that's not necessarily a cheap thing. Like, that's kind of a bigger thing to give somebody. And I was like, yeah, I mean, Walter's gonna freak out. That'd be so cool. And so we go to the table, and I didn't even tell Walter. We go to the table, and Mike's like just explaining to him about Mata Matas, and which was kind of funny because Walter's only 12, but Walter's
only 12 and 6 foot tall.
Yeah, and he doesn't look like a kid. And so he kind of stood there and was like, I know. I'm a turtle person. I know. He knows, you know, how to take care of it and stuff like that. And Mike just looks at me and he's like, does he not realize that he's taking it home? And Walter put 2 and 2 together and freaked out. And then tells Teresa, oh, we got a Mata Mata. And she immediately was like, what? They're like, that's an expensive thing, and we didn't talk about it, and so on and so forth. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Mike gave it to Walter. And like that kind of thing happens way more often. Like, it's not like a sneaky thing, I guess. It's you know, one of my buddies offered me a whatever, or, you know, somebody that we know, or historically it was, you know, if something would come through the rescue or they needed help with something or whatever, and they messaged me or messaged Teresa or whatever, or she would get like the business phone numbers to her cell phone. And so she would call me and be like, this person is texting me about a gecko or whatever. And so it was never like a sneaky thing. It was, we're those people. And so it ended up coming to us thing. And then apparently chat is going.
You really take that joy from a child. Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. Is Walter was super, super excited. And this, so the Mata Mata thing is, we have to be careful with anything that we do that's water based, because our water
sucks.
Not great. And we try to, you know, do things like letting the water sit and using conditioners and things like that. But it isn't. And this one happened to be, they were like, no, we've had this for a while. It's fine. It's handling our water in our more local area that's also bad. So when Walter said, we got a Mata Mata, I was like, what? Or it's going to die, the water's gonna kill it. And it's like, no, caveat, it already knows the water's shit and it's learned to function. Yeah. And so, and he looks nice, and we still do all the normal things, you know, we filter the water and things like that. But you got to be careful with.
We could always use more magnolia leaves, Justin.
Yes. Actually, we can go steal from them. Neighbor, that's a magnolia tree. We just figured that out, remember?
Oh yes, we will also be stealing leaves from the neighbor. Borrowing.
We won't really we're not giving them back.
I mean, we can. Once it turns to dirt and isopod food, I'll just shovel it back in his yard.
Yes. We have the people who send us that, and we have a friend who also every year he has an oak. Is it oak?
Yeah, we get oak leaves.
We get an oak leaf from one of my friends who he already rakes his leaves and puts them in bags. I'm like, why don't you just give those bags to me? And he's like, you know, you can come help me clean my yard if you're gonna take the leaves. But I'm doing him a service by not making him pick them up.
We have gone and picked a load of dandelions at some friends' yards. And
yes,
that's definitely happened. That happened today in our garden to feed things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might be to feed us because Moana has that recipe for dandelion cookies.
Also true. Yeah, that's actually what happened to us. We saw it flower, and I was like, "Holy cow! Is that what that is?"
What is that? And I was like, "I think it's a magnolia."
So Yeah,
They're
put 2 and 2 together the same way. I was like, I might offer to rake that dude's yard.
I didn't even realize that
It
grew up here.
Yeah, this far north. Well, it's like one off. Like we saw a couple more in town, but they're very small, and that particular one is pretty big compared to the other ones in town. But it's kind of like where that guy's house is just protected a little bit. It doesn't get like really slammed in the wintertime. But I'm surprised it did as well up here as it has, because it flowered
blooms every year.
Like that every year since we lived here. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I was asking when I was talking to Don and they were making jokes about the real housewives of herpetoculture. And it's kind of rubbed off on you because you do shows also. But I was commenting to them about, like, you're married to the reptile guy. Mm-hmm. And you do shows now, so you have morphed a little bit into the reptile lady.
Yeah.
But so when we got together, you were not a reptile person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you slowly became a reptile person, which was more centered on the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But
yes.
How, like, no kids as an adult, would you still talk to me if you found out I had a building with 140 reptiles in it? Like, is that a deal breaker?
So if we met today,
if we were just working adults, went on a date, and I was like, oh, also in my side job, I do shows for kids with an alligator.
I mean, I would think so, because when we met, I didn't know.
Yeah, I kind of sprung that on you.
Yeah, you did, when I went into your apartment and there was a copperhead.
In an enclosure in a state where that's legal. Not this state.
In an enclosure
Not this state.
With a rock on top of it. It was tiny, but that was...
It was a long time ago, okay? That was like the standard of care. No, it wasn't. It's a terrible idea.
It was a terrible idea, and it was not a permanent thing.
No,
he
in
only
my
had
defense,
it.
It was for school.
It was for school.
That's totally crap. It was because it was awesome, but it did have something to do with school.
And
I was young and stupid.
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would still. You want me to get gushy?
No. I just
a safety rock. Yes,
it was a safety rock.
It was a safety rock.
Hey, this is the same apartment that had a red tail named Fred living in my closet.
In the closet.
It was fantastic. That boa was cool.
Yeah.
And that closet actually worked out. Like,
and I made him donate it.
Yeah, I did donate it to my college.
Yep,
that was cool too, because
that was probably one of the lower reptile points for me. Is I was so anti-reptile when I first met him. When you went to the military, I made him get rid of everything. So I was actually, because it wasn't because
you were genuinely scared of snakes.
I was genuinely scared, and I was like, I can't feed this thing. I can't feed it. I can't put it away. I can't take it out of its enclosure to clean its enclosure, which, by the way, was just still a closet. So I couldn't take it out of the closet. I was awesome. Literally was afraid of it. So I was like, and you had Oreo at that time, who
Black and white tag
was good, but not super handleable.
So I like to run a little bit, but not like
so, and that one my mom actually volunteered to take care of that one.
Which I will say, for those that are listening, especially like Dom and the folks in the chat who are talking about single reptile people, her mom took care of my black and white tegu for a long time,
years,
then ended up being a docent at their local zoo and like knows stuff and like knew more than random people. She was just some old lady who volunteered. It was awesome. That was really cool. And her getting me to donate the boa to the college that I went to when I went to the military led to a cool story. Years later, we went to my professor's retirement party, or retirement ceremony and then like dinner or whatever. But the retirement ceremony was at the college, and like the dean of the college was there, like, a real retirement thing, and gave him the little plaque or whatever. And I was the only student other than his kids that was there. And he was like, oh, and one of my students came. This is really cool. And my professor was like, oh, and he's a reptile nerd just like me. He even donated a boa to the school. And like we got to have the moment where the dean of the college turned around and was like, what? Why did this person give us where's the boa constrictor? Like, the dude didn't even know that we had a whole thing full of reptiles, but it ended up working out down the road. But yeah.
So yeah, I would probably still talk to you. I don't know if you'd have time if you were single and had a full-time job and the shop. I don't know if you'd have time for a relationship because we use our kids a lot. So if the kids didn't exist and your second person, adults, didn't exist,
a lot of our dates would be turtle waters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of our dates were walking around your research facility.
True.
For college. So
that is true.
And a lot of our dates now are similar hiking or so. Yeah, I think the answer would be yes. I would have still dated you.
Well, apparently for the younger people in the Herpetoculture Network chat, difficult to find either a reptile person of the opposite sex who is not crazy, or a person who is cool but not a reptile person and still willing to date them even though they have 40 snakes at home.
Yeah. I imagine you didn't have 40 snakes.
Right. So, and that's the other thing, because would it be different if it's not a facility, it was my house? Because like the apartment, I only had a couple.
Yeah.
But if I had like Billy with the big rack of stuff, that's like a wall.
It's a wall.
And so there's 30 Asian colubrids.
I don't know. I was a package deal and my wife knew it. Yeah. And that was something I don't know. Because I also knew it was a package. Like I did. I just, until I had to start participating. Because when he came back from the military, I told him he could start having reptiles because he had time for them. But I was not helping. So I think there has to be parameters and expectations set. And if you want to find somebody who's not willing to keep or help you, if that is the deal, is I want somebody who is wanting to help me and love my reptiles the same. I don't know if that's as easy to find as somebody who, it's like if they just know I have the reptiles, but they don't help. Because for the first 4 years, I didn't.
Yeah.
So that's something where it's like, if you can just get them in the door, be like, you don't have to actually touch them. We don't have to talk about them. They can just be on this pretty wall and it's just going to be like a painting. Just imagine it's this painting and it doesn't.
It's not a box full of roaches.
It's not a box full of roaches. That was a fun time. I think you can slowly wear that and change that relationship. But yeah, starting that relationship with an expectation of, no, I want somebody who loves my reptiles and wants to do that. I think that would be hard to find because that wasn't even us. That it wasn't, I wasn't cool with them at first. I was in college, so the appropriate honeymoon phase existed. So I could just not see the red tail boa in the closet, and the other stuff was fun. But it took time. It took a lot of time. It took, like I said, 4 years before actually 4 years before I touched my first snake, because I did not handle Fred. I did not do anything with Fred. And then we had a corn snake when you came back from the army.
Yeah.
And it got out one time, and I made my 2-year-old help me put it back in its cage. And I don't think we even got it back in its cage. I think we just got it in a Tupperware container.
Yes.
Until Bill got home from work. But I did not touch it.
Yeah, the first official snake holding was
a red tail boa in this house.
In this house with the boa in the living room.
It was in that bedroom. It was in the girls' room because we had all the snakes in the yep.
Yeah.
And it's literally like I said, 5 years, and had we not had the kids, it might still be that way. Where it's like, you can have them. That's your hobby. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to paint, or I'm going to crochet.
Your other 70 hobbies.
My other 70 collection of hobbies. So no, I mean, I think I would still have dated you and been with you, but I do not believe I would have been as involved with the reptiles. So I don't know, would that be if I hadn't?
I think
would you have kicked me to the curb at some point?
Well, I think the culmination of your sales pitch is hurry up and have a kid with them. They're stuck and they have to accept your
I would never, ever say that is a good idea. But it's not. It's time and showing those people that they aren't. It's what we do with our shows, though. I mean, how many times have we gone to do a show, and we've gotten there, and the mom's like, "I'm not going to touch anything. I don't want to have anything to do with this. It's just for the kids." And then the next thing you know, 4 adults are standing behind these kids, touching and handling everything the same, and they get done, and they're like, "That was the first time I ever held a snake." It's I don't know. I'm glad that I have to do that. I'm sorry for all of you who are single. I tell Bill all the time that if anything ever happened to him, I don't ever want to date again. I will probably never get married. A friend of mine, actually, we have discussed it, and if somehow both of our husbands die at the same time, we're just going to live together.
Communally raise your feral children on a farm.
Communally raise our children. Just because relationships are a lot of work, and I don't want to have to trudge through that ever again.
Not starting over. I've got this one how I want it.
That sounded really bad. I'm sorry.
Nice.
That's not encouraging at all.
So what I'm trying to say is, single people, you're screwed.
I don't know. Like, that would be with us. It is a lot of we talk a lot. So if we both had the same, I think that one's mine. If we both had the same hobbies, it would be boring, honestly. So if you can find people who like to talk about their hobby, even if it's not the same hobby as yours, that's really, like, find somebody who wants to talk about their hobby as much as you want to talk about yours, and then you can just irritate each other. I don't know. You don't like to hear about my hobbies, so
I participate in your. I don't participate. In yours, I help you pick out things for your hobbies, and you ask me to help pick colors.
I do. I show you washes and ask if they look okay.
Yeah, but that's
when
it comes to, I can't really help with artistic hobbies.
You could
like
do those hobbies with me.
I could do them, but I can't. I could, but then it would be me.
Yeah.
Painting or me
Yeah.
knitting. Like I can't actually help you
Yeah.
knit like faster or whatever. Like that's not how your hobby works.
No.
Like so there's no I would either be participating in it by literally just making my own thing or watching you or answering like, oh, which color for this or what, that kind of thing. Like because you do artistic hobbies, like it's more like sounding board like participation, not
actively
doing it
physically participating. True.
Because then we have done it where we painted and then our family of 5 is just like there's nobody's talking because there are 5 of us painting at the kitchen table and everybody's doing it, everybody's participating, but because it's an artistic hobby and then it takes concentration because it takes some skill to do that, then the 5 of you are, we're all sitting there, we're all painting and everybody looks at us like, how far are you? Or what did you, like you had to stop the hobby to talk or whatever. It's just, like having artistic hobbies is like a different thing.
Yeah.
I guess. But like we still do, like we go to Michael's and get paints or what, like parts of the hobby that you can do together we do, or like go to Joann's and pick out fabric or something. Like there's ways to do that stuff together even if it's not your hobby. Like
sometimes Bill just comes home with a pile of material and asks me to make something.
Yes, I do that. We have several blankets in our house that were made in that way. I found this on sale. You should make a double-sided blanket. One side should be fake fur and the other side should be silky stuff. Are those incredibly hard to sew together? Yes, they are. It's almost impossible.
2 people.
It's going to take forever.
It takes 2 people to sew those two items together.
And one of those 2 people was not me. It was Teresa and our daughters because I don't know how to do any of that.
I had you hold the other side because it was so heavy.
Oh, yeah. It was so big that I had to pull tension on the one piece of fabric. But I just brought him home and was like, I think we should make this. It'd be cool. I don't know if it's really hard or not. And of course, it was the most hard thing you could possibly do. But it turned out awesome.
Yep.
One is literally right there.
Yep. They're super warm and super soft because you wanted fur and satin.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I didn't know that because it's not my hobby. I just asked if we could make it, and we did.
And I say yes to a lot of things.
True.
That's why I don't get surprises with animals, because you just say yes, you don't get surprised. You just get a new animal.
And
yes, you did ask.
True. But we're also far enough in it. And like I've been doing this long enough that, and Teresa used to make fun of me and Ryan McVeigh when people talk about impulse purchases. And Teresa was always making fun of me and Ryan saying, is it really an impulse purchase if at any given time you're just prepared to purchase an animal? It's not really an impulse because I can go, like, I am far enough into this hobby that if I don't know how to take care of something, I will not get it. The number of animals that I don't know how to take care of,
at least have a margin,
is pretty small. And so it's probably something very complicated or very delicate or something like that. And so I wouldn't just get that. Whereas I could basically get any colubrid and know what to do, or any carpet or Antaresia or, like if you can pretty much just look at it as like a pet quality species, I can go get one and set it up and take care of it. No big deal. But I'm not adding pets. I'm adding educational animals. So I don't just have 50 king snakes, even though I know how to take care care of all of them or what have you. Got to have the extra backup supply just in case you find something cool. Yeah, that's totally legit. And something that I don't think either of us realized. And like I mean, I sort of expected a little bit, but maybe not to the extent that it has kind of happened to us, is as we became the reptile people or whatever that like have a facility and stuff like that, especially because we both do it, and they're like on the professional side of things, when you talk to zoological facilities or things like IDNR or people like that, it isn't the hobby side where like, you know, oh, we're going to transfer something from a zoo. Like, I got to call and check in with my wife. Like, that's not what we're doing. Like, we're doing official paperwork and like professional level things. And so there isn't a lot of that. There is, if you are contacting a zoological facility or you're contacting a representative of the state, you're going to go through this official process with this paperwork and this permit. Like, this is what is happening. And so because we're both doing those things, and, you know, Teresa actually is named in the permits, they're her permits and things like that, it changes the stuff that you have access to, I guess. Not like in a shady way, but in like a trust way of, you know, when zoological facilities talk to us, or they talk to Teresa or talk to me or whatever, like if we talk to a curator at a zoo or something like that, and they're like, oh, we're going to transfer X, Y, and Z, or we had this spare animal, we're trying to do this, like, it makes it easier for them, I guess, to make that choice or to say yes or offer it to us, because we have a facility and we both do this. Like, you know, I'm not the dude that's like, I'll try to slide that crocodile past my wife or whatever. Like, that's not what we do. Like, we went to the big enclosure that we were talking about earlier. Like, when we went to get that, we went to the zoo and packed up this thing. And they also donated a huge aquarium to us. I wasn't even there for that. Teresa went and got that, and the employees of the facility helped her load it and did those things. And so it changes that aspect as well of, you know, it's not just a one-off person. Like, this is my wife and we do this professionally and we have a facility, and then we show up and go through the official processes. Like, it has made some of those things, I don't know, easier, I guess. And that also has led to us being offered a bunch of weird stuff and then come home with a mata or whatever. And I mean, that's kind of how the gators came to us, you know, one through a rescue route and one through a confiscation route with the state. But it was the same way of, you know, well, why should we give it to you? And it's like, well, we have permits and are official and they're insured and you have to be inspected and stuff like that. We were already inspected for other things and that kind of stuff. So it just made that an easier process, I guess, for them to be accepting. Like, it was legit. We had to pass the inspection, but then that person who inspected us was cool and hung out for like an hour and we just talked or whatever. I don't know. It just made it an easier process, I guess. But we are at the 1.5 hour mark. So other than stay single forever or knock them up fast, do you have other advice you'd like to give to people?
Don't listen to my husband.
Maybe not for life advice. I know a lot about reptiles, but probably not for life advice. I think I actually put that. I screenshot our group chat, just so everybody knows, and I texted it to my wife. And I'm pretty sure the part that I said was, don't do what we did.
Yeah.
I think that was actually in the group chat.
Yeah. My college friends always say we made a shit pile or a diamond out of a shit pile all the time. So that was like, man, you sure shined up that shit pile into a diamond.
It's awesome that they're probably talking about me. That's fantastic.
No.
Thank you to all of the ladies of Emporia, Kansas.
It was
State University.
we statistically should not have made it.
Everyone who sat at the chemistry table where I bought nachos and ate lunch every day and who secretly talked about me with my now wife. It worked out. So thank you for
no, it's it's I don't know if I have any good. I have a lot of things that I think are good, but then I like convince myself they're bad. I am a pessimistic person, maybe.
Yeah,
So
kinda.
kinda, yes.
Yeah, kind of.
So it's one of those things where like I said, I was like, well, you have to do this. And then it's like, well, never mind, just stay single because I'm sorry. That was actually horrible advice. I don't know if I
No,
have any.
your idea for staying single is after
Fixer upper.
going through the marriage. You didn't tell him to stay single at first. You told him to get through the marriage. It ends horribly, and then you
I
become a
didn't
nun.
say. I said that if anything ever happened to you, I'm not going to
Yes,
leave
which
you
should be horrible.
first. I'm not going to leave you first.
Yeah, because we know you'd be stuck living with Jackie somewhere, raising 17 kids, and you're only contributing 3. Don't worry, she doesn't listen to this podcast, so she's not going to know.
I should be like, fast forward
So
to an hour and
1 hour
35.
and 35 minutes. Then you'll know I made fun of Jackie. She knows it's fine.
No, I don't know. It's all, if we're talking about relationship stuff, talk a lot. Don't keep anything to yourself. Don't build it up. Set expectations and boundaries, because if people don't understand your expectations, they don't even know they need to live up to them. So that was something like even with us when we first got together, I set that expectation. I'm not having anything to do with your reptiles. And he was okay with that because there were a few of them. As it got, even as I started handling them, like it was okay, I'll handle the big ones. The small ones still scare me a little bit because they're fast and run around. But it was communicating that. It was saying, and even now, like I don't really do a lot of the feeding of the snakes, just because that isn't something that when I first set that, even when we do the facility, I fed the snakes. I could probably count on one hand how many times I fed all of the snakes. Because
I've never had to be gone for
yes,
an extended period.
That's
the cool thing about snakes is
so
you can miss a couple, 2-3 weeks. And most of the pythons don't eat every 4 weeks anyway.
So even that expectation is still there. He doesn't expect me to feed the snakes. But communicate your expectations, even if they're not, if you think, because people can't read your mind.
Well, that was the most recent time when I was gone. Like you just said, hey, text me a list because I don't know what everything eats.
Yep.
Like, and
that was one of those moments where I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, is there going to be something that he's like, oh yeah, and there's this other snake that you need to feed to. I was waiting, and there wasn't. No. Happy me.
But that's also like for my end of when she was like, hey, text me a list, or like we just took painter's tape and marked some stuff of like, hey,
this takes a large rat, this takes a medium rat, and just put it on the side of the enclosure.
Yeah. And that was like, I didn't think that was a big deal because she doesn't ever feed stuff. So she doesn't, like, you can kind of eyeball it, where like, yeah, that could eat a rat pink or that eats a mouse or whatever. Like, but like, she doesn't keep track of what I have in the freezer or, if I got, a bunch of chicks and quail were on sale or something, like that's not something that she would know. And so when she had to feed, I just listed off like, yeah, I got a bunch of quail or I got, this many small rats or whatever. It wasn't like a big deal to just give her a list or something like that. It wasn't something where I was like, well, you don't know that bull snakes eat small rat. Like,
but no, I would even say
she doesn't do that, or
that's
whatever.
Something we have set as, buddy. And we're long. I mean, we've been together 16 years. So that's something we have set. But even for newer relationships, even if the expectation is you don't have to handle or touch any of that. That takes a weight off of your potential partner. As you know, him telling me that I didn't have to do anything with Fred. I didn't have to handle him. I didn't have to do anything. It took a huge weight off my chest because I thought, like a dog, like if it was a new relationship and he's like, hey, I have this dog, I'm going home because he lived his home was 2 states away. Can you take care of my dog? That expectation as a new relationship would be there that I needed to help take care of his dog or take it out or go on walks with him or whatever. Reptiles are really cool in that sense, as you can literally tell the person that you maybe on date 1 or 2, hey, I have reptiles. You don't have to do anything with them. They're in a room. They don't.
Right.
Like
especially the way equipment is now, you could automate. I mean,
yeah,
you wouldn't have to do anything for some stuff. You
but
had timers and misters and whatnot.
Setting expectations so that they know that they don't have to, because a lot of people in relationships think you have to like everything the other person likes and you have to have all these things in common. Just talking to us, you can tell that we have the reptiles in common and we have the kids in common. There are a lot of things we don't have in common. When I first met him, I was a huge hippie. I still barely wear shoes. And like very artsy, make my own stuff. I think the first time I volunteered to make the kids Halloween costumes, he was like, no, we're buying Halloween costumes. I was like, but I really want to make them. And he was like, that's dumb. Like, we didn't have a lot in common. But
yeah, because I'm not good at a lot of those things. And so I discounted them because I didn't think it would turn out good. Because in my head, I was like, if I try to make this costume, it's going to be hot garbage because I don't know what I'm doing. And then it wasn't, because you know what you're doing. So that's
but
totally different. And
but a lot of people,
I am a lot more hippie than people give my appearance credit for. I will say that. I'm not nearly as hippie.
He's a lot more self-sustaining. That's not a hippie.
Yeah, no. Prepper people and hippie people have so much more in common than they will ever admit.
They do.
Just because you wear your boots when you go out and pick your beets and forage for greens doesn't mean that hippie who's picking mushrooms isn't doing the same thing. True. That's a bunch of crap.
True. But yeah, I think that's what I would advice I would give as a second half of this couple is, they might not be reptile people or be comfortable with being reptile people. But tell them they don't have to be, and don't be upset when they aren't, because that might change over time or it might not ever change over time. And that just needs to be understood in the relationship. I don't ever expect, I've actually kind of joked with Bill because I'm like, crochet is a really good thing to do when you're bored, if you're, when you're at work or whatever. And he refuses. So
I don't get, I get it. I logically get it. I understand how it works. I think the stuff that comes out the other end for crochet and needlepoint and knitting is so cool. I just, no part of me wants to do it. I don't know why. I look at that and I don't want to do that. I don't know. But I love all the stuff that gets made from it. I think it's super cool. I just don't want to do it. I don't know why. I don't have any desire to pick that.
In the same way, you can find the thing that makes your hobby cool. Some people maybe like art. If they like art and you can do a beautiful planted vivarium enclosure, it's art in and of itself.
For your hobbies, like I love picking out stuff and like picking out colors, or what about this yarn to make a hat or something. Like I think that part is cool, and I love to see what you make at the end. But it just bores my face off. It just takes so long to make them. Yeah, I don't know. But
that's
yeah,
my advice.
I agree.
Stop finding common things about people, because being married to yourself is probably pretty boring.
And it's crazy to think that you won't change. You will,
Yeah.
for sure. Trust me, I eat all sorts of spicy crap now that I never would have thought, and all these freaking vegetables and people putting onions and stuff. And yes, you will change, especially if you marry a almost vegan hippie and then introduce her to pork chops.
Nowhere near vegan.
You were a whole lot of green things.
Vegan. I love milk and cheese.
She's the kind of person that eats tofu. It's so weird.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Flavor it with whatever you're putting.
Nope. Flavor it with pork chops. Pork chops. That's what I think.
Is that where we're going to end?
Yeah. No.
Is your advice just flavor
yeah,
it?
My advice for marriage is to flavor it with pork chops. That's my advice. No.
And I'm just going to say that if you're vegan, you can't change. They just won't.
Just give up on those people.
Just give up on those people.
No.
I'm sorry if you're vegan. Don't stop listening to those podcasts.
I'll probably get a bad comment somewhere. It's okay. No. So to finish the episode, I want to let folks know, because Black Box Cages is a sponsor, I have adjusted how we're going to do the Black Box Cages build. So originally the plan with the Black Box Cages was, because I have 4 of the 36s, so they're 3 by 3 by 18 inches. And then I have Viv Tech UV right now. And the idea was to do 4 desert style enclosures that we were going to do Australian species. And then literally for the whole marriage and Mother's Day thing that we were just talking about, I talked to Teresa. She wants to do something different with the bearded dragons. That was one of my 4 Australian species. And so I also have 4 species from Madagascar. And so I'm going to pivot on that because I have 2 that are kind of already mocked up. Our son made it to sectionals and track, so I wasn't able to do lives when I did the mock-up. But I am going to do a couple of lives, and I'll make some posts to show folks as I mock things up for the next 2. And then when I actually start to zoopoxy, I'll show you that as well. But the first 2 mock-ups are desert, and they were rock ledges, and then what is going to be like a dry tree stump. That still works for 2 of the Madagascar species because the Aplurus that I was talking about earlier, I have 2 different species of those. One is a strict rock dweller, and one transitions between rocks and trees. So that'll work to take those 2 enclosures. Then the other 2 enclosures, I'm still going to use the Arcadia lamp holders and stuff that fit all the black box enclosures. But I'm going to transition out of desert, and I'm going to do 1 forest and 1 rainforest. And that's going to be nosy bee geckos, which is Paraodura oviceps. And then I have boivini, which are Madagascar giant velvet geckos. And so those will be in like the quad of enclosures from Black Box. The bottom 2 will be the rainforest and forest for the 2 gecko species. And then the top 2 will be the Aplurus species in the desert setups like I was talking about before. So I will make some posts, and I'll try to do some lives when I set up the rainforest part. I'm going to try and do what I had Teresa do before, and she'll probably end up painting it because that's what she does. We're going to make the fake trees like we did before, but I'm going to cap them and then try to do what looks kind of like a stump. And that way we'll be able to see if they will sit under the UV or how they would pick the lights. The oviceps are quote unquote almost entirely nocturnal. And I want to see if maybe they're actually crepuscular, because we do see ours out sometimes. And so I'm hoping that if we have that lower level UV, maybe they'll pick or choose and we'll be able to watch that. The 2 desert ones are Aplurus are a lot like bearded dragons. So I know that they bask and they go under UV and stuff. So that's a given. Like I know how to set those up. And then the boivini are really big. They are like tokay big, and they are that velvety skin, And so I'm going to try and do a forest setup for them. And so it's that mid-strength UV and see whether or not they have any preference there. Ours sit out all the time. They don't really hide all that much, and they're very bold. The male will eat off tongs and stuff. So the oviceps does hide. It's littler, so they do hide a little bit. But I'm hoping that that's a really big enclosure for an oviceps. So I'm hoping that having that much space, it won't maybe pay attention to us as much. So maybe it'll be out a little bit more. And then one of the Eplurus species also is a big time hider, where it basks in the rocks, but it doesn't want to see us. So I'm hoping that still having the large enclosure will let it do that, and maybe we'll be able to see it, and it can't really pay attention to us. So I am continuing with the black box builds. We just transitioned species a little bit. It's pretty awesome. I did the thick pink foam and stacked it all up. Those enclosures are super lightweight. They're already drilled and stuff, and so even adding all the foam in there, I can still move the whole thing. The Zoopoxy is going to add some weight, but it will still be really easy to shift those around. It should be pretty cool. So I think it's going to be neat. I got the VivTech lights the other day, and then the lamp holders are on the way. I ended up ordering those from Reptile Basics, and then I already had heat panels from them, and then I have a VE 200 thermostat. And Reptile Basics, their panels and those thermostats go together. I have those in all of our snake stuff, and they work really well. And so I'm going to use those in this enclosure also. Because with the forest and the rainforest stuff, it only needs to be like low 80s. It doesn't need to be hot. And then I might try to modify something for the 2 desert ones and use spot lamps. I haven't really decided how I'm going to do that yet. But they're already drilled and everything and set up from Black Box for the heat panels. So that's pretty cool. So that's the plan going forward with that. I encourage you guys to check out all the Black Box stuff. We got to meet them in Georgia. I've mentioned it a couple of times on here. They were actually super cool. We hung out and talked, and I explained what I wanted to do with the enclosures. We talked about setting up stuff for chameleons and trying to do drains, and they have a lot of really cool plans. It should be neat to see what they do going forward, because the stuff I already have is really nice. So it'll be neat to see what the next step is. So that was episode 35. I have guests booked all the way through the end of July. And so we will see you again in 2 weeks. Later.